In fact, we've lived through the most incredible amount of change, rapid economic change, extraordinary demographic change in the United States. The growth of this really genuinely multicultural society for the first time. Sociological change, the acceptance of the change of mores around women and women working and marriage, the integration of gay people and gay marriage as into as a completely acceptable and indeed now rather sort of banal part of life. Those are real changes, and they, and for some people they create questions. Are we changing so fast that we left something behind? Is the life that I knew 30 years ago gone? And there's another aspect to this too, which is that we have also lived through, and this is more recent, a genuine change in the status of the United States. We were, for 6 decades after the Second World War, we were absolutely the dominant world power, and our political system, even when it wasn't always admired at home, and even when it always didn't live up to its, to its promise at home, was admired and copied and imitated all over the world. And we all became used to this idea that almost as if democracy was some inevitable thing, that American democracy was strong, and sooner or later the rest of the world would want to be like us. And of course, the 1989 moment when the communist system fell, and so many European countries and others did try to become democracies. I mean, we understood this as some kind of inevitability. And of course, the rise of China and the growing power of China, and the fact that China did not choose to follow our path and has chosen something very different, I think has given people the sense that we aren't maybe as influential and big as we used to be. Add to, on top of that, some very real blows to American, and I should say American and Western prestige, and not just prestige, but the feeling that we're competent, that we're competent and therefore deserve to be leaders. One of them obviously is the financial crisis of 2008 and 9, which wasn't so much, and of course it had a big economic effect on people, but it also had a psychological effect. We thought these people knew what they were doing. And by the way, this is something you hear in Europe as well. These bankers, they understood these flows of money, and we thought they knew what they were doing. It turned out that they didn't, and they weren't really in control of the system. And that was a big blow to, to the kind of package of American democracy plus prosperity plus competence, this vision of what Western democracy was. And another big blow was, it wasn't so much it wasn't that we lost the war in Iraq, it was that it somehow, it wasn't this, neither Iraq nor Afghanistan were great successes, and the feeling that the United States was involved in things that could, and not just the United States, the rest of the West was waging wars and was not succeeding. And so this feeling of failure, this, the rise of other countries, coupled with this sense that something very deep is changing and I can't fix it, this for a lot of people has driven them in the direction of very radical politics. And I should say that this, radicalism and even violence in politics very often do begin exactly this way. I mean, if you look back over history, if you look at the history of the 1930s, or even if you go back further, if you look at the 19th century, if you look at how Germans felt in Germany during the era of rapid industrialization in their country. If you look at France, and which, at the same era, very rapid change, you get a very similar kind of disappointment. In my book, I quote the work of a German writer from the 19th century, who writes about the past, and this is in the 19th century, already is writing about the past in a way that sounds amazingly familiar to the nostalgists of our own time. So he's already talking about making Germany great again, in the mid and late 19th century. He's talking about, we were great once, we had heroes once, now all we have are these petty squabbling politicians, he's already looking backwards and thinking about an earlier era. And that same kind of nostalgia, that same kind of feeling that we want to restore something that we've lost something, that we're missing something, and on top of that, that I am owed something, and because of these changes, I'm not succeeding. This is a package that repeats itself over time. There's a version of it that exists in Germany. There's a version of that you get in France at the same time. And of course, we find this kind of restorative nostalgia, this desire for restoring the past because the present is so unsatisfactory. You can find it now in the United States, you can find it in Poland, you can find it in Hungary, you can find it in England, you can find it in France and Germany. It's a very common feeling. And although it's true, of course, that conservatives, even in the traditional sense, thought of themselves as conserving things and trying to keep the best of the past and maybe changing a little bit as we move into the future. This is what we known as Burkean conservatism, that it changes, as the writer Edmund Burke described, things change slowly. There has come a point for a lot of people who were conservatives where they think that's not happening fast enough. It's not good enough to conserve a few things. I actually want the past back, as it was. And wanting the past back means you have to smash up things or destroy them in the present in order to bring them back. And this is the inspiration for radical politics. So again, the book doesn't have a single answer, but it describes the trajectories of many people who made a series of choices and often end up in very radical places, either openly anti-democratic, sometimes even advocating violence, but certainly being very, very opposed to the status quo and looking for ways to undermine it.